you so much for taking the time to being on my podcast, Shift Happens. And as you know, I speak to women from all walks of life, and I'm trying to be as diverse and international and global as possible. And so the female lead, and which you started as an educational charity first and foremost, I think in 2015, is really, if I'm correct, one of the first major platforms I started to follow. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is exactly what everybody's kind of yearning for. But to have like strengthening, and that the togetherness is important, and where can we find female role models? Yeah. So anyway, that's just that. So you are like a role model to me and have always been. And then I met you there, and it was just amazing. Before we get started, I wanted to ask you a few questions. What is your current state of mind?
Oh, gosh, no one ever asked me that question. That's so original. My current state of mind is, if I'm really honest, Claudia, it's a bit frustrated. I feel as if I've spent a few years collecting all the data and all the facts, and I feel my work is logical and powerful, and yet I'm not sure I'm getting the cut through that I believe logic would suggest.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm asking myself why. And of course, I'm not used to something not being logical, because that's my background and that's the way I've always worked. So I keep asking myself, what am I missing? What haven't I done? Why is it not enough to have 8.6 million women all giving their opinion and us being pretty unified in what's going wrong? And yet we're not changing anything. So yeah, I'm frustrated, Claudia. I really am. And I don't like that feeling. And I'm really trying to turn that into a positive drive for more energy and new thinking. But that's how I'm feeling at the moment, frustrated.
Well, that's not good. So what would be the like your ideal outcome, like one or two things that you actually had hoped for, or that was like a motivator, to bring all these 8.6 million together over the past 10 years. So yeah.
What would it look like? Very simple, very, very simple. You can talk to any man and he will say something nice about a woman or women. But what we're asking for is not about niceties. It's not about being polite. It's not about being kind. It's about recognizing that women are living longer. They have different phases in their life. They are single for quite a long time. They may choose to get into some form of partnership. They may choose to have children, and then they're alone again because their children leave home. And I think women are now looking for how to find meaning and purpose in their lives. And to do that, they're searching for something that makes them feel fulfilled. And a lot of women consider that something to do with work. And so the impact I'm looking for is men recognizing that something significant has changed, and that women want meaning, purpose, and some element of work in their life. And that to do that, it's not about men being polite. It's about recognizing we are 51% of the population, and governments and businesses and leaders surely have a responsibility in satisfying all of their customers, all of the consumers, or all of the citizens. And they're not. They're absolutely not. And so this isn't a nice to do, it's an imperative to
It's an imperative.
satisfy 51% of the population. Also, sorry, one other point, this will make money for countries and businesses. So it's not a vain idea. It's something
not
that is compelling economic motivation.
Not at all. And I just last week or on the weekend, the Forbes list of where 50 women, over 50 came out with actually 200 women. And all in their like second act or in their, thriving in their second half of life. And the spending power of women in that age group is $15 trillion. I mean,
wow.
So maybe that, maybe numbers, have an impact in that sense. So I can see, of course, and understand the frustration, but I'm always, for the hope. And I think, where we are now, even though I'm sure you have been thriving for something else, we would not be there without you and trailblazing women like you. So,
Thank you.
what is your idea of perfect happiness?
Oh, perfect. Well, perfect happiness, as we know, is transitory. So we can be very, very happy for a moment, a day, maybe slightly longer, but it's not a continuum. So the important thing to recognize is that happiness is that feeling that we get in between moments of frustration, anger, misery, striving, all of those things. So perfect happiness, that moment of perfection, I would say I am very similar to millions of other women. Because I'm a mother, it has to involve my children, even though my children are grown up. And of course, it has to involve my husband, even though he can be annoying sometimes, as we know, husbands can be. Children too.
Children
but
too, I was just going to say.
But it would have to do with us being together, feeling a moment of connectedness, of belonging together. And that is pure happiness. And I think it's a common feeling that brings so many women together. And I know not everybody has a partner or is married, not everybody has children, but it might be with friends rather than family. But for most people, it's about being with others.
Yeah. Which living person do you most admire?
Oh, gosh. It's really, really hard. I'm always fearful of mentioning politicians. The Queen has gone, bless her heart, because otherwise I would pick the Queen. And I mean the old Queen. Of course, we have Queen Camilla now, who is doing a marvelous job. I don't know. I mean, I love all the women who are just pushing the boundaries of who they are, there are some women that I relate to a bit more. So, you know, I love Ava DuVernay. I love Meryl Streep. I love Michelle Obama. Yeah, there are lots of women I admire, but at the end of the day, there's so much to admire in so many women, and I take what I can from each of them.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. So now when we look or when you share with us your turning point, you said that it was really when you started your first job at a company called CACI, that where you basically jumped into cold water and were exposed to the endlessness or endless opportunities of data.
Yep, that's right. I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but fortunately, the timing of me deciding on my first job led me to this company. I think it was called California Analysis Centers Incorporated at the time. So a magnificent software consultancy, 2,500 people. And little old me arrived there thinking, well, this is exciting. And it was the beginning of the technology revolution, truthfully. And I just landed in the best space with brilliant people. And I loved it from day one. And I still to this day can't believe how fortunate I was to find myself in this organization, and just a tiny part of it setting up in the UK.
And you met your husband there, correct?
Yes, I walked in, and he wasn't my boss. Let me just be really clear. But on the first day I walked in, I noticed him. Let me just put it that way. I found out he was with someone else at the time, so I put my enthusiasm in a little box and just got my head down and worked. We had a lot of fun, and, you know, I just learned so much when I was there and enjoyed every day. So it was really the first time I had felt like I bounced out of bed in this morning and couldn't wait to work. And I'd never felt that all the way through school and education. It was always like, oh no, here we go. Work was like total enthusiasm right from the beginning.
Yeah, must have been very empowering. And then this whole yeah.
Sorry.
No, so and then this whole enthusiasm around data management and finding out what people want, what people need, predictability. Then you mastered at Tesco and really revolutionized the customer service field, and that is so fascinating. You have to elaborate that a little bit.
Yes, so what we learned at this first organization, CACI, was how to take very big data it was called back then, and compress it so that you could find meaningful patterns in it. And that was a new science. And we used something called cluster analysis. So what it does is it finds people who are similar to others and separates those who are very different to other people. So you end up with typologies, little cohorts of people who belong together but are distinct from others. So you learn to classify people, to segment them, if you like. So we created this type of language: segmentation, classification, profiling, all the words that are now commonly used.
Totally standard language, yeah.
But at the time, had not ever been used in this context before. So it was about describing, so where I started, it was about describing who lives around a bank branch or around a retailer. How many people, what were they like? What were their demographics? You know, how did they get to work? All of those things helped retailers and banks to understand each branch and how different it was, and therefore what products and services to sell to that community, to offer to that community. So that was the beginning. The big change was when we recognized, gosh, if we can do this with data that's up to 10 years old, which is the census data, because it was only refreshed every 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how powerful it would be if we used customer transaction data. And again, that had never been done before because technology was so expensive that each time someone sent out the bill, like a telephone company, a mobile company, or a bank or building society, they'd send out the bill and then they'd put that data away and store it offline, which meant no one ever used it again. So it was kind of just existing without having any meaning or value. And what we created in our new business when we started it was this idea of how can you hold millions and millions of records with all the detailed transaction data in one place at one time. And the context you need for this is that spreadsheets just couldn't handle this amount of data at that time. So technology and the software tools hadn't kept pace with increasing volumes of data. They have now, but not then.
Of course,
and
yeah.
And so we built a tool set that effectively allowed us to bring all this data together. And that was the key, because we were then ready. So when Tesco came to us and said, we have this very large data set and we can't analyze it, but we're really curious. We want to know if this concept of rewarding customers, saying thank you to them for buying from us, we want to understand if that creates an uplift or not. Is it going to break us or is it going to make us? And that was really the key question. And so it was at that point we said, yes, we've got the tool set, we can do it.
And now this is a tool that, you know, every brand thrives on. I mean, customer rewarding programs, it's just like, this is, everybody uses it. It's like being explored. Everybody's in it, collecting loyal points here, collecting loyal points there, making decisions on which credit card to sign up with, because, you know, you evaluate what kind of perks you get from here. I mean, but basically all started with that, right? I mean, that was the initial, yeah, that is so fascinating. So that was a real breakthrough.
What was interesting though, Claudia, the most important thing that was so interesting was not just that we had the right capability at the right time, but the leader, the boss of Tesco, was modest enough to say, this data analysis that you've done, this understanding of my millions of customers is so powerful. It's better than my instinct and my experience as a leader of 30 years. That modesty, that recognition that science and data can be more predictable than experience and sheer intellect, that is what made that moment so special, because he said, I get it, I understand it, we're going to do it this way. And that was the turning point.
That's big. Really. I mean, it's influencing us all still. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you then used basically this knowledge and technology and thought, how can you use it for women in the workplace? Also because you've been working up until then in a field as a woman that has really been completely male dominated. I mean, I'm sure that you can count on two hands the female colleagues that you must have had in those years. How was that working in or did that not so matter so much because the content of the work was just so fascinating that was what it was all about? Or was it that working in a male-dominated environment led you to think about the female lead?
So interesting. I didn't think about it so much at the time. I thought about the fact that every boardroom around the world that I walked into was male, totally male. So I was dealing mostly with retailers, and then some of the biggest, best CPGs, consumer products, goods companies around the world. So, Unilever, Procter and Gamble, I can't think of any, Kimberly Clark. I mean, these are huge organizations with sophisticated marketing programs. So most of the organizations I was dealing with, I would be the only woman in the room. And yes, did it feel strange? Yes. I think, again, what I found I was lucky with is that I was the only one doing what I was doing. So actually, they stopped seeing a woman and they started seeing someone who knew how to do what they wanted. Because everybody who came to us said, we want to do a Tesco. We want to double our market share. We want to beat our competitors and make millions more than we're making today. So they didn't care if I was male, female, green, or red. It was like, yeah, they saw so this was my opportunity. And I kind of forgot about it too, and just talked with passion about what we'd done and what we could do. And I think that's essentially what allowed me to operate in all these different markets and deliver this capability, because we didn't just do it in the UK with Tesco. We actually almost did it bigger and better in the US. So, and Canada and France and Brazil and all around the world. So it was amazing. But you asked the question, what did I learn from that? And how did I translate into, so this is you'll have to forgive me because there are two parts to this story, but part one was I had a very simple idea, which was, when I was growing up and I was at school and afterwards, the women I would hear about were amazing, Florence Nightingale, Marie Curie, Ada Lovelace, but I realized they were old and dead, and dead a long time ago. And I thought, where are all the women today? Because all I heard about was Branson and Dyson, and now Musk, Bezos, Gates, etc. So I thought, where are the women? So the first idea was a very simple, almost like a gift that I wanted to give back, to say, I've had a fantastic career. Thank you very much. And I wanted to gift role models to schoolgirls so that they could see that women are alive today doing amazing things, and they need to read about them and see them on film. So that was what I did first. You know, I created these beautiful collections of women and gifted them to thousands of schools around the world. And I thought, you know, job done. There we go. That's going to change everything. Duh. And then I realized maybe not. And, you know, women were saying to me, but it doesn't get easier and it doesn't get better. We're not seen and we're not heard. So then I realized there's a much bigger problem to solve. And that's when I thought, what can I use that I understand? And I suddenly realized what we did at dunnhumby, which was my business with my husband, was we showed that not all consumers are the same. They want and need different things. And that was the science we created. And that's what made the extra money for the retailers, because by understanding what consumers want, you can give them what they want, and hey ho, they spend more money. So he who does it well, or she, is doing it because they understand those differences. So I thought, actually, it's really obvious. Women are not all the same. And actually, increasingly, women are changing. They are not getting married as early. Some of them are deciding never to get married. It's not, you know, just single relationships anymore. Women are delaying having children. A lot of women are breadwinners. And a lot of women live longer and live on their own, and actually quite often in some hardship. So there's all these differences in women. And yet, as I look at how businesses and leaders describe women, it's so simplistic. We are defined by our age and whether we're married or not. That's it. Maybe if we have children, if they can find that out. That's it. And it's like, we're much more complicated than that. And so that's really my focus for the female lead, to show that the choices a woman makes, the life choices, signal and trigger different needs and different behaviors. And it's vital for leaders to understand these differences.
And so you are gathering data really from all over the globe, right? I mean, it's a huge international movement.
Yes, what's wonderful is that women trust us. They see us as a safe space. My sole purpose is to prove that women are worth a lot, and a lot more than a lot of our male leadership currently recognizes. So women are the key buyers for most products everywhere in the world. So women may not earn all the money in the household, but they decide mostly how it's spent. And this is a power that is never discussed, that women are in control of about 70% of all GDP, in every country. And so why are leaders not recognizing that by understanding women better and all the things they're missing and want could be amazing?
It's I mean, I feel here and there it's shaking, and the old crusts are beginning to crumble. But when they do, then you have, you know, political movements in countries that are so conservative and so want to dial the clock back. And who are the first to target and who are the first to being diminished of, you know, fought rights? It's the women. And
Yeah.
that's why that's why I really strongly believe that now more than ever, women have to stick together and fight for each other. And the, you know, the more like all of us who are living in freedom, so to speak, and have this big privilege, really need to reach out and support and reach out a hand and lift up the ones that do not have this. Yeah, I mean, I just organized and curated a discussion and salon evening here with a think tank in New York, and we talked about women's health. And the research for this, I was just, it really actually depressed me, because I thought, this is unbelievable. I mean, women have always been under-researched, underserved, under everything, because we were diminished to, you know, like a few, 2, 3 factors. Yeah. And now we see how multifaceted it is, and especially in women's health and wellness. And so, yes, I think your frustration that you mentioned in the beginning, it's just the motor that we, you know, keep being united and keep going and fighting. Yeah. I mean, this is
It's so
crucial.
important.
Yeah.
And you know, we create the next generation. I mean, if we stop having babies, you know,
Yeah.
if we
That's not.
decide it's too hard to have a baby and work, and it's too hard to find good childcare and be the person we want to be, we stop having children, and then the whole system falls over. So it's important that our needs are recognized, because we are part of the continuation of society. Do you know one of
So,
the reasons they don't test mice,
mhm,
female mice, in health studies, is because those mice are too busy producing the next generation of mice for them to test on.
yeah.
And hey, it's not a nice thought, but it's a job, isn't it, to produce the next generation of mice to test on. And that's, you know, and they don't test on female mice. And so women don't get science and health solutions that
Hmm.
suit their bodies and their, um, you know, their whole physiology.
Hmm. Hmm. So, you are an expert in data and empiric knowledge and making, you know, important decisions for business organizations on it, especially for women connected to the female lead. But you also believe in the personal story and the individual story. And that is something that I strongly believe in. And that's why I'm, you know, have started this platform a few years ago, where I'm organizing salons, which are these smaller groups of women to get together and discuss and focus on a topic that is, you know, female related, but also can be general philosophical. And I always have this vision just to train our voice, yeah, to train to speak out and to be heard and do it in a room with other women, just to, you know, feel this connection. So how do you relate to these two different pillars, but that are both so important in understanding women?
Well, I think you expressed it very well, Claudia. I mean, I think stories hit our hearts. You know, they make us care. They make us notice. And we can ignore 100 or 1,000 people more easily than we can ignore one powerful emotional story. You know, we can relate to that. But the combination of both, which is here's one story or two or three, but here is the quantitative analysis. Here are the 1,000 or the 100,000 where we can prove this is not an isolated thing. It allows us to show that there's not only power in the stories, but power in the numbers. And you put those two together, and I think that's where it becomes very, very hard to ignore. One of the things we have to do, and you might have thoughts on how to achieve this, is we have to get women to accept what they all believe in, because we're very good at finding differences between cohorts of women. We even at times fall out or criticize or, you know, are quite damning of women in other situations. And I think the power we can achieve will come from us agreeing on, say, 3 overwhelmingly powerful concepts that all women believe in. And if we can stick to those and work towards those, I think we have a single multi-million compelling voice.
I'll think about it. I get back to you.
Wonderful.
Great challenge. I love it. So as a very active and powerful leader in the second half of your life, what is how do you stay fit? What energizes you? How do you calm down? What's the balance that you've found for yourself in this phase of life?
I love that you call it my second half. That's very generous of you. I like it.
I mean, I don't know. There are so many terminologies around it, which I think is great. I mean, it's second spring in Asia, second half. It's like second act, third act, fourth act. Yeah. So it's all about opportunity and progression. There's no end to it. Yeah. And that's what I love about it. Like, I feel so unleashed. Yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful to hear. And, you know, honestly, I feel the same. I love reading other people's work. So I was lucky enough to meet Philippa Gregory, who's written the most amazing book. It's called Normal Women, and it's 900 years of history of women in the world.
Oh,
I
that's
really
fantastic.
recommend it to you. It is a work of magnitude and force and impact. And she is the most amazing woman. And it's interesting. It's not hard to read. It's fascinating. And I'm consuming more and more brilliant works of women, by women, you know, art, music of women, and all of it makes me realize there's no end to talent. It's just the voice that we're missing. It's just having these stories told. But, you know, what keeps me happy, motivated, excited is meeting amazing people who are all trying to change and have impact in some way. and enjoying their journey and their beliefs and having great conversations about it. I love it. And that's what keeps me really motivated.
Mhm.
I would love to say I'm also a champion skier, or I'm a skydiver or something like that. But the reality is I'm not. So all my pursuits are very, very simple and quite gentle. I have a beautiful garden. I love my garden. I love the sea and being on or near the sea.
Mhm.
But other than that, really, I just get excited about
Mhm.
what others are doing and
Mhm.
how it can build and enthuse me and inspire me to do more. And
Mhm.
that's what keeps me going.
Mhm. Beautiful. I have one last question. So for your groundbreaking achievements in technology and in data, big data management, and so on, you were honored by the British system, and now you carry the title OBE. So for our non-familiar listeners with the British honor system, it's the Officer of the Order of the British Empire.
Very good. Well done.
And yes, and so I was wondering, and I read that this is then the title Dame, and I wanted to know if this is still actually done. Like
Well,
if
sadly, Claudia,
Mhm.
sadly, I do not have the title Dame. I would
Oh,
love to have the title Dame.
yeah,
I'm still hoping,
okay.
maybe one day. But no, Dame is still very much used. There's Baroness and there's Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And Baroness is when you're in the House of Lords,
Mm-hmm.
and that's quite a title and a power. That's like a lord in the
Mm-hmm.
House of um, and then Dame is absolutely an amazing recognition, but sadly, no. I would actually use it if I had it, although I might smile a bit because if you know the British system, you also know that in pantomimes you always have the Dame, and they're always a female. Well, it's a male usually dressed up as a female, and they're usually
Yeah.
the funniest character in the pantomime. But no, Dame is a
Oh, I thought,
seriously high.
well, then we need to work on AI, I guess, because
Yeah, put in a good word for me.
no, because that I of course I Googled it because I'm not familiar with it. So I thought that this officer is the same as that. All right. Well, the last thing I want to mention is in this year you published your latest book, When She's in the Room. And what's next?
Well, when she's in the room is all about my journey on data and with stories, exactly as you've described, to change and transform our world as women. And so what's next is for me to bring this alive and to get millions of people to take the survey that we promote in the book
Mm-hmm.
and also online. It's called Fulfillment Finder. It takes about 7 minutes. And when you do the survey, it allows you to find out what your emotional drivers are. So what are the things that make you uniquely you? And what are your sort of like superpowers? And so Fulfillment Finder will give you these and will give you your persona, which we've found to be incredibly accurate. Men can do it as well, but they're just described as a woman, but it works just as well for men.
Yeah.
So my ambition is that everybody takes Fulfillment Finder and we start to think about the sense of fulfillment, perhaps more than happiness, because happiness is transitory, but fulfillment is a life worth, a life well lived.
Well, that's a beautiful, rounded ending of our conversation today. Again, I'm so grateful that you spent this time with me. And yeah, I wish you a wonderful rest of the summer.
Thank you so much, Claudia. It's been an absolute joy and privilege.